Crossover has been crossed. You may have made it, but not that many bills did this year. Check out this graphic for VPAP. Yeah, only 49% of Senate bills and only 42% of House bills are still alive. Now, this doesn't even include budget items or resolutions. This is just bills trying to become law. If yours made it, congrats. If not, well, at least you weren't the only one. I'm David Smith with Thrive Advocacy Solutions, and this is my weekly, while the General Assembly is in session, Virginia Justice Legislative Recap. Let's take a look at some of the bills that are still alive, starting with some I haven't covered yet. SB 1013 is Senator Boysko's bill to provide an affirmative defense for people with developmental disorders who are charged with assaulting a police officer. Fun fact from Rob P., the ED at Justice Ford, Virginia is the only state in the country where physical contact isn't needed for an assault against a police officer conviction. Now, normally this conviction comes with a mandatory minimum sentence, but the argument for this bill is folks protected under it deserve some sort of deference since they don't process external stimuli the same as other folks. Now, variations of this bill have passed for several years, but keep dying at the hand of the governor's veto pen. This year's version picked up a couple R's in the Senate, but we'll have to wait to see if anything has changed in Youngkin's world to make him sign it this year. On the topic of policing, an upstream justice issue that we haven't addressed yet are traffic monitoring cameras, where they're used and how that information gets used. This year is HB 2724 from Delegate Herring. I remember when a variation of this bill first popped up a few years ago. I was working for the now retired Delegate Corey, and she's big on transparency, and it caused us to pause. You see, it looks like it's about regulation, but in reality, it creates a path for thousands of cameras to be installed around the state and run by a private company. The question becomes, how much do you want the government and a private company to know about your coming and goings if it means they can track people and vehicles of interest more efficiently? This year's bill passed the House 59-39 with an interesting mix of D's and R's voting against it. All right, another bill I haven't talked about yet is HB 2235 from Delegate Cousins. She's got a bunch of great bills this year, and this one restricts the use of shackles on women giving birth who are in the custody of local and regional jails. Now, a few years ago, Virginia passed a similar law with prisons, but because prisons and jails are in two different sections of code, this bill is needed to protect pregnant mothers in jail. It's gone from the House to the Senate without a single no vote, so it should be good for the governor's signature. All right, let's move on to some updates on bills we've talked about in the past. First up, Delegate Seabell, another great delegate bringing some incredible bills this year. Her bill is HB 1894, or as I'm calling it, the Don't Freeze to Death in Prison bill. It passed the House floor and picked up a couple R votes, including the former Public Safety Chair, Delegate Wilt, and Delegate Washman, who has more prison beds in his district than any other delegate. It wasn't a strong showing of our support, but it does open up some possibilities for the Senate. HB 1665, that would itemize court costs that easily passed out of the House with only 6 votes against it, is waiting to be heard in Senate Courts of Justice. And Delegate Jones's other bill, HB 1661, that would set a maximum minimum payment for those courts costs, is also waiting to be heard in Senate Courts of Justice. Senator Bagby's SB 1255, that would limit the use of shackles, is moving quickly in the House, having already passed Courts of Justice unanimously and is on the House floor. And this is no surprise since Delegate Cousins' HB 2222 passed unanimously. Now, mind you, this is not the same as shackling pregnant women. This is dealing with shackling of juveniles in court. This should have smooth sailing and be signed by the governor. Delegate Williams' HB 2252 and Senator Newcraig's SB 936, both of them are Republicans, are carrying Reform Alliance's Probation Incentive Bill, and both crossed over. It's interesting to note that the Senate version passed unanimously, while the House version was pretty close to a party line vote with only a few R's crossing over. If that split holds in the House this time, it could give Youngkin a reason to veto it. Hopefully it does not. Now, after a close party line vote in the House, Delegate Callsen's Counsel at First Appearance bill passed Senate Courts of Justice unanimously. The Senate Cognate passed on a party line vote and never got a hearing in Finance and Appropriations. Delegate Callsen's bill may be headed for the same fate, though it has a fiscal impact of less than $1 million, which is generally a good sign when it comes to the money committees. SB 1409, Senator Bagby and the Virginia Coalition on Solitary Confinement's bill to limit the use of solitary confinement continues to pass on party line votes, without any Republicans this year, it's not looking very promising for the governor's signature. And last up, we have Delegate Henson's bill to strengthen oversight in local jails, and that died in the Senate Rehabilitation and Social Services Committee. I wasn't able to be there, and the video isn't online yet, so I can't tell the details, but the committee is writing a letter, which is a way of saying something needs to be looked at here, but we're not willing to pass this bill. Now, the Department of Corrections did slap a $2.9 million annual price tag on this bill. I'll do some more digging this week and give you some more details when we come back next week. And that wraps up this week's report. Come back next week and see what happened with Delegate Henson's bill, what bills made it through their second chamber, and what other justice news is coming out of the Virginia General Assembly.